We are getting some big updates from the Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi, in which he gave us a decent amount of information that I want to break down for you, plus other things that are happening inside of Ukraine. So before we get started, make sure you subscribe, you turn on notifications, and you give this video a thumbs up. And we're still fundraising for an armored truck for the front lines.
So guys, I just want to show you the amazing vehicle that we got from Ukrainian Aid Ops Cars for Ukraine and then Bandera Mobile. What makes this vehicle so interesting and so unique is the fact that not only it's a 4x4 vehicle that's got low mileage and is amazing technical abilities, but it's also armored vehicles. If you look through there, you'll see that there's an armored plate, also of 5mm, that is securing this whole door. 3 layers of steel. 3 layers of steel, so you've got this thin sheet metal, but you've got that 5mm steel that's protecting. You'll also see that we've already issued and put our drone jammer on. This is specifically for our unit, it's what we use, and it's already been installed. I mean, we got the vehicle yesterday afternoon, and we've already installed our drone jammers.
If you guys want to go ahead and donate, I'll put that link down below. We're almost there. We're getting very close. That aside, Syrskyi provided a lot of information. You may remember that a few days ago, Zelensky had given Putin/Lukashenko a deadline. Hey, we have information that these repeaters are inside of Belarus, repeaters in which Russia uses when they do their nightly attacks inside of Ukraine. You see, think of it like this. You've got Russia over here, I know it's probably flipped in your screen, and Belarus on top. Well, when Russia does these attacks, they have these repeaters or towers in Belarus which relay information to the drones, to the pilots, back and forth. And so Zelensky, now 2 weeks ago, had given Belarus and Lukashenko a ultimatum. You need to shut these down and destroy them or get rid of them, or we will do that for you. That then sent Lukashenko to Moscow to meet with Putin at literally the last day of the deadline. Ukraine kind of gave them a little bit of a few days to kind of figure things out. We thought Lukashenko was going to go all the way back to Belarus and dismantle this stuff. Instead, he went to China. We still don't know what they talked about, Putin and Lukashenko. But today we're learning from Syrskyi that the repeaters in Belarus have not been dismantled. We know this because, according to him, yesterday, one of them was turned on. And then he kind of added a little bit later, I think they will not turn them on again. Which makes you wonder, clearly behind the scenes, threats were given. I don't know if it was a conversation that Zelensky had with someone or maybe back channeling. They told him, if you do that again, we will make sure you can't do that again. Lukashenko really truly has not commented as much on this stuff. He really doesn't want to pull Belarus into a war with Ukraine. He knows that they wouldn't fare out too well. And on top of that, he also has to deal with the fact that he's got to respond to Putin, who demands that stuff to be on. So it's a weird back and forth. I'm not really quite sure where he's sitting in all this because we really haven't heard much comments from that. But we are getting another update about the logistics on the front lines for Russia. As you may know, Ukrainian forces have been attacking everything coming in from Rostov through Luhansk and Donetsk, whether it's Zaporizhia or Kherson, all the way down to Crimea. And so Ukrainian forces have been doing numbers on logistics. And according to Syrskyi, Russian activity on the front line has decreased by 30% due to, as he says here, destruction of logistics there, saying currently approximately 45% to 50% of all combat clashes are our offensive actions. That, my friends, is a major flip. Because for the longest time, Ukraine was on the defensive. Defensive. Now, according to new reports from like the New York Post, like we mentioned yesterday, Russians only have about 30 to 45 minutes in the front lines before Ukrainian drones find them and then attack them. And that's why Russia really truly isn't able to move forward. You know, we talked yesterday in the video about Putin's speech about how Ukrainians are being pushed back, encircled, Russians are moving forward, but then independent analytics and geopolitics and Russian military bloggers themselves have disputed that, saying, no, that's not true, that we're not over in that area. And so, long story short, what Syrskyi is saying here is being backed up by the Russian military bloggers themselves, which is a pretty big update. because it is very rare for the Ukrainian intelligence and Russian intelligence, or at least the Russian military bloggers, to be agreeing on something here. It seems like Putin is just trying to overstate what's happening in front lines, either A, because he's being misinformed, or B, he is purposely doing said thing. Today was also a big strike for Ukrainian forces on many different fronts. Obviously in Crimea towards Kerch, we know that another oil tank was hit. Ukrainians are pretty much making it to where that peninsula is not really going to have anything. No fuel. I mean, right this very second, we do have reports of farmers not being able to move their farming equipment because they don't have fuel. And the Russian military says that fuel is ours. And even though Russia's claiming they're going to be slowly getting logistics in, at this very moment, Russia really doesn't have many ways of doing that. And when a new one pops up, Ukrainian forces find out, hey, they're moving things over here, and then they destroy it. But today we also found out that Ukrainian forces destroyed a space communications center in the Moscow region, in which, interestingly enough, there's a lot of civilians uploading photos and videos online showcasing this, in which, yes, something was hit, something was burning. Zelensky says here that the distance from the state border to this facility is 500 kilometers, showcasing, once again, that Ukrainians are being able to strike things deep, and they're not being stopped as much, though I do want to remind you that, yes, Russia is knocking down a decent amount of these drones, and that's sort of calculated in all these strikes. Ukraine and Russia both do the same thing. Hey, if we send 100 drones in, we're hoping for 10 to hit their mark, but if 5 does, this is what we're going to expect. And so both sides are playing this game. And right now, I mean, with this one here, Russia said they knocked down a decent amount of those drones that were sent out last night, and they did, but all it takes are 1 or 2 drones to get through, and that is a success. And so in this case here, yes, they were able to do that. According to him, it says that Ukraine already reached 4 such Russian centers, not only in Moscow region, but also in the Vladimir region. Step by step, we're implementing our own plan of long-range sanctions and making it as difficult as possible for the aggressor state to carry its invasion operations against Ukraine. So, yeah, they're continuing to do what they do. We also got a few other announcements from Zelensky. One, he said that they're preparing for the winter, which you're probably saying to yourself, but it's summer. It's June 30th. How are they preparing for the winter? Well, that's because they have to prepare for the winter. I need to warn you, Ukraine is doing really great right now. They're doing great taking out the Russian logistics. They're doing great holding back the Russians, taking back some land, and of course their long-range, mid-range strikes. That is wonderful. But the only thing that Russia truly has for them, besides having manpower on the front lines they could put through the meat grinder, is the fact that come winter, Russian air systems will be able to overpower the Ukrainian air defense systems, which will be obviously catastrophic for Ukraine, as Russia will go after all of their heating plants, electricity, so that Ukrainians are cold and in the dark again. That's something that Zelensky's been warning every winter. And so right now he says that they are preparing for this stuff, saying we continue our preparations for the winter period, gas for Ukraine, protections for our power generation, logistics routes, aka building up air defense systems near this stuff. It's not a matter of will Ukraine have enough for that, because at this very moment it doesn't really look like it. It's a question of what will Russia attack and how many drones are going to send it at once? Because Ukraine has to prepare for Russia to overpower the Ukrainian air defense systems. And so they're fortifying certain things, moving things other places, and getting things together so that way Ukraine is more protected. One of those things, once again, is shutting down the repeaters inside of Belarus. Something that I think we will, if Lukashenko decides not to do it, Ukraine will find a way to do that. We do have other things to talk about. Denmark announced a $670 million defense aid package for Ukraine. That is pretty massive, man. And so under this, a partner country provides direct funds to Ukrainian arm manufacturers, so that way Ukraine can make what they need to and then put them in the front lines. This package within the $670 million, $200 million is going to be a part of what I was mentioning earlier, which is actually called the Danish model. It's a mechanism in which a partner country provides direct funding to Ukrainian manufacturers. That way they make the stuff they need and then they're good to go. Sort of like a, what do you need? Okay, we're going to give you the money to make that stuff, and then obviously you have to prove that you made that stuff. We did hear from the Danish Defense Ministry, who said, quote, there are currently new dynamics on the battlefield with regard to Ukraine. That does not mean we can simply sit back, adding later, on the contrary, we must maintain our support for Ukraine and increase the pressure on Russia in order to strengthen Ukraine's negotiating position. And I wanted to highlight that. The reason why is because a lot of people keep on saying that, like, oh, wait a minute, countries are just funding to keep the war going. No, that's not really what's happening here. Countries are helping Ukraine to first, so they can defend themselves, whether it's critical infrastructure, civilians, etc. Next is for Ukraine to build up a lot of its long-range strikes and all those kind of missiles, because every time Ukraine destroys something, it works better for them in negotiation. So anytime a country gives them money or weapons, it's essentially helping Ukraine at the negotiation table without physically being there, since countries won't physically be able to do there. And if the more things you could destroy on the Russian end, it will definitely help out Ukraine when it comes to negotiations. And so that's the important thing to understand, whether it's the UK, anyone in Europe, realistically, it's helping Ukraine one way or another. There's a few other things that we do have to talk about. I'm not going to bring up the whole Tucker Carlson interview. You know, it feels like every time Tucker has an interview with someone, it's always a pro-Russian person. And so they interviewed Victor, who kind of puts a twist on the Ukraine's history and blames Ukraine troops for the crimes committed by Russian forces and a few other things. And Tucker, at the end of the day, is sort of like a just giant Russian propagandist tool here in the United States. It is upsetting to see that. I just wish that Tucker actually told the truth. Like, we saw Candace Owen go into Russia and make all these videos and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like they're whitewashing and they're not really truly telling the truth. Seems like they're being paid. Obviously, we've got no proof for that, but that's just my mindset. I want to mention the interview that was currently in Bloomberg when it came to Sweden's military intelligence, because they mentioned a few different interesting things, but the biggest thing here is the fact that they're saying that even if Putin had died today, Russia has set their path to continue moving forward. And so even if you took out Putin, it's not going to stop the war inside of Ukraine. So I just want to kind of just quote him here saying, quote, we don't see this crisis as a temporary one. Russia has chosen its path and there's no way back. Adding roughly that there is no political force capable of challenging public dissatisfaction into an alternative to the current regime. Meaning that Putin built up this entire thing. He's got safeguards and all that in place. And so if he was gone today, there would be too much change that need to happen in order to change the trajectory in which Russia is currently going on. And so that was his main point here. Some people agree with that. Some people disagree with that, saying it really is Putin's mindset on this. But like we've said before, if Putin was gone today, who would take over? Would they be able to end the war immediately? No. They're going to have to do exactly what Putin needs to do, which is find a way to make it look like Russia has won here. At this very moment, that's not really something that Russia and Putin's going to be physically able to do. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is the entire MiG deal between Ukraine and Poland. Because at this very moment, that deal has completely fallen apart. In case you don't know, at least according to Poland, Ukraine has pulled out of the MiG-29 deal. Obviously, there's been this weird tension between Poland and Ukraine. A lot of it's got to do with its leadership and a few other things, whether it's the Volyn massacre and all these other things. And so right now, according to Poland, they're saying that there was a deal all the way back in January in which Poland is kind of phasing out its MiG-29s. They were going to transfer those to Ukraine. And then in return, Ukraine was going to give over some kind of drones. We don't really know the full structure of this, but obviously price comparison, that'd be a lot of drones that Ukraine would probably need. And according to Poland, they're saying that negotiations had fallen through. So I guess the grand question is, they were transferring 9 MiG-29s. How many drones would that have been? And if Ukraine had to do that before the drones were delivered, or before the planes were delivered, how much would that affect the current front lines? Or is it a contract in which Ukraine would have to deliver them over time, over months, weeks, years, etc.? And so right now, we don't really know. Now, Poland did originally transfer, I think, 14 back in spring of 23. Which was absolutely amazing. Actually, I think Ukraine just lost a few of those just about a week ago now. I think 2 of them. One was sitting down, and I think one was fell out of the sky. And so those are just a quick headlines I wanted to break down for you. There isn't really too much of an update on deep state maps. Russia's making these false claims that they're moving forward. Deep state maps and Russian intelligence on their own, at least the military bloggers, are kind of going against the Kremlin, interestingly. But that is your update. As a reminder, we're still fundraising for these new trucks for the front lines. But I do want to thank you for joining me. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. I'm Joey, and stay safe.